Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with our new guest, Joe Glass. We're here to break down an awesome campaign, the Pride Agenda Dysphoria Issue 1, and just your history as a creator, award-winning with titles such as Acceptable Losses, Glitter Vipers, and The Miracles. Joe, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing pretty well, thank you very much. Things have been really good here. We've actually had some sunshine for the last couple of days, so it hasn't been constant rain here in the UK for a change, so it's been pretty good.
You know, I'm from Ohio, and the coolest thing about us was the eclipse. We were in the totality for, 3 minutes. Outside of that, it's not that cool. We have a lot of corn. The weather, just yesterday it was like tornado weather. It was raining. I woke up at 8. It was raining. Now the sun's coming out at 10. That's as Ohio as it gets for you, with a lot of potholes in the mix as well. So, Joe, where did your creative journey begin? I mean, you have a helm of just a crap load of titles under your belt, even a novel, A Con Affair, that you dropped not too long ago. I mean, where did your journey begin for you?
Sorry?
Where did your journey begin for you?
It's so hard to say. Technically speaking, like, I've only been like making comics and really writing things which have been published now for maybe 15, 16 years. But like, I knew I kind of wanted to do something creative before that. I'd say like I was reading comics when I was in my early teens, maybe pre-teens a little bit. And I got to a point where at first I was like, I really want to draw comic books. So I like went and did art in school and discovered I cannot do sequential art for love nor money. I'm just not that skilled. And like, don't get me wrong, I tried, and you can work through the hard times to get there in the end, and just like, I just could not do it. But I knew I could tell a story. So for me, it then became a focus on writing. So like, I kind of went on and did like university degrees. I did my bachelor's in English literature and creative writing. And then I did a master's degree in script writing for film, television, and radio. Because I was hoping because there wasn't any like comic writing courses back then. So I kind of hoped like there'd be transferable skills. And they were. But like, primarily, like, I could have just done all of that entirely by myself. Like, I would say to anyone who's thinking of writing and are younger and like thinking like, oh, what do I have to go to university to do? Don't necessarily think that you have to. I mean, I'm not like, educate yourself. Education is always good. Go to university, but don't feel like you have to do an English degree to become a writer. You could do any degree. Find whatever passion you have and do that, but you can still become a writer, because so much of writing is self-taught. In fact, if I was to give that kind of advice to someone now, I'd be like, take like a business management degree or something, because that is the part which, after then, like 16 years ago, starting doing the actual job of being a comic book creator, like an independent comic book creator, and writer as a whole, and having to like market yourself and sort of be your own PR and all that. Yeah, none of that comes naturally to me at all. And part of me thinks like, I kind of wish I did something back in the day when my brain was a bit more spongy and I could have like taken up useful hints and tips on that. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started. I was writing little bits and pieces, obviously through the degree and shortly afterwards, and I had some friends who also wanted to make comic books, and we did this other one, and they read some of the first scenes of Pride over my shoulder one day, and they were like, you should make this, you should actually release it, and kind of all snowballed from there.
And I was reading the omnibus from Dark Horse, 452 pages. Holy smokes! You definitely put a few more panels in since then. And I mean, it was such a phenomenal read. A huge cast, huge roster. I just love your ability to like just sneak in the nods. We were talking about Wolf and like the nod to the Wolverine scene, but if I'm not mistaken, White Trash, Wayne Matters, is that a play on Eminem?
Yeah, it is. Generally speaking, it's actually something which not many people have picked up on, but all of the main characters of the Pride all of their real names are in most cases a portmanteau of two famous queer people. And back when I started writing it, Eminem was sort of doing the whole playing kind of homophobic shtick to get attention, because I truly don't believe that Eminem is actually homophobic. But there was a period at the start of his career, or when he started getting big, where he kept on using the homophobic language, and it was just kind of like, you're just doing this to get attention. You're doing this to cause a rise. So I thought, like, yeah, okay, I can play that game. I'll get a rise by getting a little hint into there of him in the name for White Trash. But most of the other characters in The Pride, they're two or more famous queer people who are like openly queer, put together to create the real name of those characters. So it was just my way of doing a little nod to like actual trailblazers in the LGBTQ community.
And the bear, being an actual bear with like the leather straps, like it was just like chef kiss.
Oh yeah, I mean, like that was the other thing when it came to the superhero names then, like, and their code names. I was just like, I had that moment like when I'm starting coming up with, like, I don't know what to call them, and then it literally just hit me like a truck, just like, you know, like all these gay subculture terms sound like code names. So like, why not just have bear, wolf, twink, muscle Mary, and just run with that? Obviously it can't work with 100% all the heroes, so we'll have a White Trash who becomes Stand and Frost, but which aren't really gay subculture terms. But like, you know, a lot of ones are in there, and it was just like, well, yeah, because they just sound fun. I've got a character called Otter who isn't actually a super hero in the series, and I kind of, it's one of those things, like I tried so hard to think of a superhero who could actually run with the codename Otter, but I was just like, it's not really gonna work. So Otter became one of our men in the chairs in the second season.
And I really love too, with Wolf, like he doesn't really have superhero abilities. He's the only one that wears a mask. Yeah,
it was kind of it was part of the sort of wider thing I wanted to do. Was obviously the world that was being created was having this world where superhero powers are common, and like nearly everyone has some sort of power to some level, and that people who don't have powers are rarer. And I wanted to have like a character who is non-powered as part of the team, and it made sense to me to make that Wolf because he'd also be like the detective character. He's also comes from like a very high profile background, so therefore he'd be like the one character who wants to hide it. But it also touches on his own how he feels about his own sexuality. Like he's openly gay but by the start of the book, but he's kind of only really openly gay in his superhero persona. In his everyday persona, he's still quite closeted, and it allowed me to play with those ideas of the and I loathe this term, the straight acting gay. So it was just a way to sort of have various different kinds and expressions of sexuality, but also people's relationship with their sexuality portrayed on the page. So like Wolf being one of the only heroes who has a mask and has a secret identity on the team, really sort of allowed me to play into that.
And we see evidence of that too with his prior superhero team, and how, him just hanging around Fab Man caused speculation, and he was eventually, because it's not, we're okay to talk about that, right? That's been out for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, and that comic's been out for like 15-16 years, technically. Okay.
Hey, if you're getting spoiled, that's on you at this point. But I love how the team sat him down, and it's like, we don't even know if you're gay, but there's people speculating it. Are you? And he's like, yes. And they're like, whoa, like people aren't going to feel safe. And when I read that, it just really hit me. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is a person who's saving your life, and you're not going to feel safe because he's gay? Like, that just was such, I felt like superb writing, just to like put the reader in that, like I can't use words today, but you guys know what I mean, to put them in that feeling, and just like how like insane it is to be at both ends of that spectrum.
I mean, like I say, my comic now is about 15-16 years old, and that was written at a time when Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is essentially the policy that I was playing with. It was, I think, I think it was still on the books when I was writing it, but by the time the comic book came out, it had just been like repealed in America. So, but I would say, like, even now, like nearly 20 years later, it's still an issue. We still have people who are arguing that, like, oh, someone's not gonna, I don't feel safe to have my kids around you in school because you're a trans teacher, or because you're a gay teacher. And like, we still have, just as much as everyone goes like, you got gay marriage now, things are better. No, we still have gay guys being pushed out of jobs because people might not feel comfortable. And it's one of those things where, like, we're told that things are getting better, and we're told that these things will change, and that, you know, it's not necessarily something you need to have in a story. I'm just like, no, you'll be surprised. I do know, like, for the future of the Pride, like, there was a pitch which we had, which initially didn't get the go ahead because it was going to involve a certain presidential candidate. And they were like, well, he's just lost the presidency. He's not going to be something to worry about by the time this comic comes out. So you kind of dated it. So, like, you know, maybe come up with something else. And I'm just like, well, here we are, what, 4 or 5 years later, and yeah, he's still very much
surprise. So, and it's crazy too, because like, politicians are some of the biggest pieces of scum out there, and they still keep their jobs.
Exactly. They can be absolute monsters and do terrible things, and yet they'll, even if they lose their position in the instant that it comes out, you can almost guarantee that they'll come back in like a couple of years, and they'll be getting back on the ladder, climbing again.
That's exactly what's happening right now.
exactly, and we see it like all the time, and yet we sort of do this about some. We get this sort of same argument like level towards like a queer person just for living their life authentically. Even when living their life authentically is not necessarily happening in the environment of work or whatever, you know, they can create boxes and segmentalize the different parts of their life. Like, not to say that someone isn't queer when they're at work, but like, they're not necessarily going to teach kids in the kindergarten wearing what they would wear to a pride parade and trying to throw glitter in their faces. It's not gonna happen. And yet people use people's identity to just attack them in that way. And like I say, that's kind of always been what the Pride's about how no matter you can think it's getting better for us, it comes from a fight that we got to get there, and that fight hasn't ended, and it's cyclical sometimes, and so like, we will keep on having to fight it, and like, that's where we're going with the continuation of the series as well, is like these battles that we're always having to fight to get where we are keep on coming, and as such, like, we need to come together and be together to stand up to them. So that's kind of why I'll keep the Pride going for as long as it's needed.
I love that. We were talking backstage a little bit about just like the different elements of queer representation, and I really was taken back by how like unafraid and unapologetic you were with not holding your punches, like how some people can treat those who are gay, and the words they use, and the slurs and obscenities, and just how they just like view and treat them. And it was nice to see repercussions happen to those. It was nice to see them get, you know, beat up or handled. It really like just gave me that, you know, that good feeling. For you, what do you feel is some of the more important elements of queer representation in a comic book?
For me, in comic books, like, one of the biggest elements, I think, which is hugely important and still a major issue that we should all be striving to be improving in, is genuineness, like actual authenticity. Because like, even to this day, like, so many times when you've got a queer book or something like that, particularly in like big 2 comics, or like a queer novel sometimes, which is centering a gay romance, whether it be male or female, 9 times out of 10 they're written by a straight person. And like, that's great, and like, there are some fantastic allies out there who are doing fantastic work. Tom Taylor just knocks it out of the park. He's a brilliant ally. Gail Simone as well. They do fantastic work in that, despite not being part of the community themselves and just being allies. But that's never really should be done to replace be authentic voices of the queer community, being able to tell our own stories. And where I think hopefully the pride comes out a little stronger than what you get from like a big two comic book, even when a big two comic book does go for authenticity and includes like queer creators behind the scenes to actually make it, they have a tendency to shy away from some of the harsher realities sometimes, and like also shy away from some aspects of queer culture and queer community, because it may not be too palatable to absolutely everyone. So one of the things I want to do with the Pride is like make a book which, as far as I'm concerned, can be enjoyed by anyone, whether they are part of the LGBTQ community or not, but also is specifically catering to an LGBTQ reader, in that they will see aspects of their community and things that they talk about and worry about with their other queer allies and queer friends and family that maybe would not ever come up in a more traditional comic book, so that's kind of a big thing I think we still need to work on, is giving those voices, and particularly those books which are including like true authenticity, and talking about everything in a much more upfront manner, the sort of chance to shine and sort of be supported. So we kind of really need that sort of level of support for the independent, authentic things, and also more authentic voices in more sort of big name sort of publisher sort of books as well. So for me, it's as much as it was the big thing at the start, it's still the main issue, is just having authenticity.
And speaking of the creative teams and everything, who's all involved with the Pride?
Oh God, I mean, if we go from the start, we could be here all day, because when I started the series, it was one of my first books, so I learned from a lot of mistakes very early on, but we kind of like wound up having to be like this huge array of incredible artists who helped me put it together. Then the second season, which we did through Comixology Originals, we actually had that sort of budget to actually sort of and time to actually stick with like a core creative team. So now the future of the Pride in the Pride Agenda Dysphoria, which is our next story arc now, is myself doing the writing still. We've got August Kanakis, who's doing the artwork. They did the artwork for my Young Men in Love story. So if anyone's picked up that anthology, it'll be them doing the art again. We've got Heather Breckle doing the colours. Michael Stark doing our letters, who's actually lettered the entirety of the Pride so far. So like he's one of my mainstays. Gets to see the insane amount of words I try to put in any bit of dialogue, and has to constantly remind me, like, yeah, you need to get that back. And we even had like some editorial help behind the scenes as well, with Chiari. Oh God, I'm blanking on the surname now. But yeah, it's been a nice little sort of core team to actually put it now. Oh, and Xavier Levagnino did our cover, and did an incredible cover for issue 1, which obviously is exclusive cover to the Kickstarter. So that's the sort of core team for the Pride now going forward, for this first issue, and we'll have different cover artists for each issue, hopefully.
Well, speaking of Kickstarter, let's go ahead and head on over to Kickstarter and check out what the hype is all about. So the biggest thing, and wow, mid play, yeah. Hey, let's go. So one of the biggest things is this is putting the team in a larger like battle place, right? Like they're going from street level to cosmic threats now.
Yeah, it's sort of getting them to sort of step up as superheroes, because the first arc was very much about the team forming, and obviously sort of the backlashness potentially from that, and the second arc had actually a threat from beyond the stars sort of coming down to earth and getting them to have a bit more of a sort of sci-fi sort of enemy kind of thing, but they were still defending things on a kind of grounded level. And I thought, like, I've always seen the Pride as being like big time superheroes, like big time like Avengers types or Justice League types. So this series will be them doing that, whilst also, as well as stepping up to these much bigger threats to the world, having to deal with a smaller scale threat which is affecting their communities directly. So like, as you can see from like some of the interior art teasers we've got, they're going to be dealing with huge threats from space, but also continue to deal with the smaller threats to our everyday life within the community. So because like for me, like that's kind of part of what it's like being a queer person sometimes. Like there's huge things going on in the world, and we have to like try and like be part of that to take to have our say in it, or fight it if we need to. But then there's always these smaller battles, which sometimes are even just small everyday scenarios. So it's kind of playing with that whole idea of like that's what it's like being queer sometimes, is you have to fight in a big battle and a small battle all at the same time.
And these interiors are absolutely gorgeous. Is it hard balancing such a large cast? I mean, they all have their own unique personalities, their own unique abilities. I mean, do you ever find yourself like maybe stuck in like a rock and a hard place with it?
It can be a little difficult at times. Like sometimes it's very hard because you feel like, oh, that character hasn't had a moment to shine in this whole issue. But like what I always try and do is like try and give everyone a little bit of speaking time, a little moment. And if they haven't had that moment in a whole issue, be like, right, the next issue, they're coming front and center. You know, they need time to sort of get up front again. And it's also just thinking about like what is the story I'm telling in this. So like this particular arc will have a couple of new characters actually stepping up to the forefront a little bit. Some characters who were introduced in the second season who didn't get a huge chance to develop past an introduction will get much more chance to shine this time. And yeah, we just sort of play with that a little bit.
So let's go ahead and check out some of the rewards. These covers are just gorgeous too, holy crap.
So that's the cover to the Pride Summer Special, which is by David Tulaski.
I love the bear prints, paw prints right here.
Perfect, right? Like all the little details that he threw into it just mean so much. Like the different towels that they're on as well, being the different Pride flags.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. But like the Pride Summer Special is actually, it was the previous Kickstarter, and we're actually still working on putting that one together as well. And it was just because like I just always loved those Marvel swimsuit specials from the 90s. And I was just like, well, why don't I do something like that with the Pride? Because like Marvel aren't giving us a swimsuit special again, so let's just do our own. But I'm doing it very queer. It's going to include some short stories in it. And I also thought of a way to sort of create like a reason behind all the pinups that appear in it. So yeah, it's the stuff I've been sent in so far. I'm really excited about it. So I can't wait for people to see that too. And obviously this Kickstarter now for Agenda Dysphoria issue 1 gives everyone a nice chance to actually get a copy of Summer Special as well, even if they missed the previous campaign.
And then we have A Con Affair, a rom-com. So your novel that you just came out with. Tell us a little bit about this.
So it's a bit of a wee one because it's very different from anything I've done before, not just in like genre format, etc., but also like content. Generally, most of the comics I've ever done are fairly all ages accessible. There are some which are maybe a young adult kind of like and up a little bit, but nothing's been really too adult. Whereas A Con Affair started as me wanting to do a challenge to myself, and I kind of like I'd always wanted to do like a novel, and I had been open to the idea of self-publishing through Amazon, etc., through their KDP program, and I was trying to come up with ideas, and I was looking at niches which are popular. Like one niche which is quite popular is romance, and another which is erotica. So I was like, okay, challenge myself. Can I write erotica? And I was like, I gave it a go. And firstly, yeah, apparently I can. But also, I started writing it, and because I was like, I'm not just going to write a random sex scene. I'm going to create a plot around it. And like I say, I did the whole classic of write what you know. So I set it at Comic-Cons because obviously I've been doing Comic-Cons for over 10 years myself. So it was like, well, I know them very well. I know what it's like to do them. So why not set it in this sort of environment? And then as I was writing, I was just like, yeah, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be. It wound up becoming this like really kind of moving romance. Like it's kind of heartwarming, but it's also wicked spicy because it also deals with like gay hookup culture a little bit, so it's like a lot of that in there too. But it also kind of deals with where it's like being an aspiring comic creator, and going to Comic Cons and like having a lot of these things in your life happening at once, not knowing like quite how to deal with it. So it's this really sort of, thankfully, very well received so far, really sort of intense story about growing up, getting older a little bit, and sort of not realizing that you're not where you wanted to be. And part of that necessarily also being like not realizing you don't have anything else in your life, and then what if something comes in and this partner comes in potentially for one of our leads, and can they make that work, or will it become just another crisis like every other comic book thing in the world? So hopefully more people will check it out, because people have been loving it so far. It is quite different from what I've done before though, so a warning to anyone, it's quite a bit more adult.
I love that. So let's go ahead, check out the rewards as well. We have a digital copy of this. This is pounds, correct?
Yeah, so it's in pounds at the moment.
I see anything without a dollar, and my American brain just like, So you get the digital copy for £3, about $4. The print copy for about £5, and then $7 USD. That's awesome price on this. How many pages is the first issue going to be?
I can't remember if it's 20 or 24. I think it's 24 pages, if I remember correctly, because that was one of, it's 24, I think, because I wanted to keep the story and that sort of standard comic book size that I grew up with. And obviously these days now they've gone back down to 20 pages, but I'm just like, I still need those extra 4 pages. So.
And then we have the combo pack coming in at £6, about $8. You'll get the both print and digital copy. The summer special for £10, about $13 USD. That'll get you the digital, the print, and then the Pride summer special as well. The book bundle, so this will get you everything listed plus a con affair for about £15, $19 USD. Awesome price on that. You get the digital, the print copy, and then a con affair. So awesome. And then Pride bundle, so that's everything included. £20, 25 USD. You'll get that digital copy, a con affair, the Pride summer special, and then the main book of the hour. So signed bundle for just £5 more, 32 USD. Is that going to be all the physical copies are signed?
Yeah, all the physical copies are signed. So you'll get a signed copy of a Conifer, Summer Special, and Gender Dysphoria issue 1, and they'll all be signed. And it's the only reward which is limited. I think it's limited to 200. And according to this, still 119 left, so still plenty there.
Yeah, you burned through a huge chunk of that. Holy crap, congratulations. Your hand's gonna be tired.
I thankfully not as tired as the first time I did a Kickstarter, because honestly, the very first one, I did a collection of the first story arc of the Pride, and I can't remember if you could limit rewards back then, because we're talking like years and years ago now. So many copies I had to sign of that graphic novel.
Oh no.
I think it was something like 600-700 odd copies I had to sign in the end.
Oh my gosh. Did you mess up any like signatures and have to redo it?
Oh no, thankfully, like I kept my signatures so stupidly simple for a reason, so that it's just like it'll never change.
It's a glass of wine in one hand and the pen in the other, just like, all right, we got this down.
Like, honestly, I think I went through like 5 Sharpies signing them all. Like, they just kept running out.
Not bad. So Joe, after going through the Kickstarter, for anyone who might be on the fence about backing, what would you like to say to them directly to help push them over that hump?
I think what I generally say to anyone is like, you might be thinking like, oh, maybe this story isn't for me, because it's not, you're not part of the queer community, or because you are, but you're just like, I don't know if I want comics which are explicitly about being queer as well. And I would always say is like, well, you can always give it a chance. At the end of the day, a digital copy of this book is a fairly low price. And like I say, you can always check it out. And if it's not for you, at least you tried it. Like, and that's the thing which I think we need more of in comics, is we're so, particularly like in published comics, in the comics you find in the comic shop, it's so often the same creators over and over again, and like these creators are fantastic, and it like good reason that they get in so many of the comics. But what we're seeing in the industry as well now is an aversion to taking risks, which means that we're seeing fewer and fewer new voices breaking in at the moment. So what I tend to say with anyone who's like umming and ahhing, kind of on the fence, I'm just like, what's £3? It's nothing. You can't even buy a coffee with it. You might as well give this a try. If it's not for you, you've only lost £3. If you find that you love it, then that's a whole new thing then for you to check out, and you can grab the Pride Omnibus. There's other books there which I've done. So it's a small change, but could lead to like a big new thing you love, you know. So that's what I always try and say to anyone. Like, if you were worried about backing the larger tiers because what if you don't like it? I get that. Like, it puts me off thinking grabbing something necessarily if I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not. But if the cost is nice and low for like a little taster of it, then why not give it a shot?
And you spend that probably on an iced coffee or fast food here and there, so
like I think the cheapest coffee around here in Cardiff is probably about £3.50. So
true. So Joe, it is time for us to begin wrapping up before I begin my beautiful day at work. But with that being said, I always love to end the show on a strong note. So piece of advice, and then what you're consuming outside of creating. So for the aspiring writer out there looking to take their first steps into just starting, what's the biggest thing you could tell them to help them on their journey?
I think that there'd be two things, technically, and it would be, firstly, read voraciously, and not just what you love. Read outside of your wheelhouse. Like, read out, like, if you think, I'm going to make comic books, I just read comic books. Don't just read comic books. Read novels. Like, read different things as well. Read articles. Check out New Scientist every now and then. Just read everywhere. Because, like I say, all of it starts coming in here, and you start building better stories for it. And then the other thing I would say to any new writer is, like, don't stress yourself out about, like, well, where's it going to go? How am I going to get it out? How is it going to make me money? How am I going to put a roof over my head? Don't worry about that if you're just starting out. Just write it down, get it out, get something written. You can work all that other stuff out later. But if you spend all your time worrying about, like, oh, well, what's the point in scripting it if I don't know how it's going to get drawn, or like who's going to release it or anything like that, don't fret about that, because you'll just never write the script. Like, write the script, the rest can come later, So the big things I say with any kind of new writer or anyone who's thinking about creating anything is just do it, and you do it by writing and you do it by reading, because the two will feed into each other.
And setting up too many barriers, just like you said, will just push you back from doing it, right?
There are far too many barriers already. I mean, like, even in a world where we've got crowdfunding and like Kickstarter and everything, it's still incredibly difficult to get out there as an independent comic creator or an independent creative of any kind. So creating more barriers for yourself to sort of stop you from doing it, then that's just not helpful. It's not conducive to the creative process or to you. So, like, I mean, it's very much the start of a Pride came from that. Like I said, I was scripting it, and it took some friends reading it over my shoulder to be like, you need to release that, because I had created the barrier in my head, was like, I'm just writing it for me. I don't think anyone will want it. Like, I don't know, like, if there's enough audience for this kind of comic book. And they were the ones who like told me, no, it's really good. You should just release it anyway. And you can worry about that later. And sure enough, there was an audience. There were people like me who wanted to read comic books like that. So it's very much a case of, like, I had to get over that same thing. So, like, that's why it's a piece of advice I'd always give. It's just like, don't worry about those things. Just get it done, and then you can worry about it later.
I love that. And last but not least, what are you consuming outside of creating, books that you love, comics, TV shows? If you play video games, what games are you rocking?
Games I'm a little bit behind on, because times are tough and everything, and also my time is very much taken up a lot of the time. So really, video game wise, I'm pretty much playing Fortnite every now and then.
Hey, nothing wrong with that though.
I haven't touched Fortnite in about 2 weeks, but I literally was thinking about it this morning. Just like, I've got a day off today, I should really play Fortnite for like an hour or something. So I might chill with that later.
No build?
but I tend to like narrative video games more often than not. Like the last big one I did was the Marvel Spider-Man 2,
Really
on
good.
PlayStation 5, which I just thought was fantastic. And then I'm just reading lots of books at the moment. My comics reading sort of fallen back slightly. I'm still reading some comics, but like it's mainly been books, novels I've been reading lately. And I found a passionate love for an author called TJ Klune, who's written like various different books. But like everything he's written that I've read so far, I've just absolutely adored, and like devoured in a week. So I'd probably say like really good ones for people to check out are The Extraordinaries, particularly if they're comic book fans, because it's a young adult male romance, but set in a world with superheroes and with people with superpowers. So like you can, if you're coming from comics and you love your superhero comics, then check The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune out. But yeah, comics wise, I'm pretty much in my same old shtick. The thing which brought me into comics in the first place is X-Men. Like I'm loving the X-Men books. I'm sad to see Krakoa go, but I'm actually enjoying the comics that we're seeing with the end of Krakoa, and I'm very excited to see what's coming next. So yeah, I'm still going to be an X-head like forever. So even if I can't afford any other comics, I'll always find some way to grab myself a copy of X-Men.
I love that. So what an awesome sit down, Joe. Thank you once again for hopping on and hanging out with us. Everyone watching, be sure to back this campaign today. That link is in the chat. If you can't afford to back, simply share this. Put it on Facebook, Twitter. Word of mouth is 100% free and it costs you nothing to do. With that being said, hope you all have a fantastic Thursday, but most importantly, keep it geekly.